two, one, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm Mary Fran Johnson, the Executive Director of CIO Programs here at IDG. And it is with great pleasure that I bring you today's interview on Leadership Live with Elizabeth Hackinson, who is the Global Chief Information Officer at Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric has a global presence in over 100 companies. This is a $30 billion U.S. French multinational corporation. They are a leader in power management and automation systems for homes, buildings, data centers, infrastructure, and industries. Schneider has 144,000 employees around the world, and they make industrial-scale energy management systems, ranging from circuit breakers to safety switches to power meters and transformers. Elizabeth has more than 30 years of experience leading technology, operations, and initiatives across large-scale, complex organizations, including several Fortune 100 firms. Prior to joining Schneider Electric 1 year ago, she held 3 major CIO roles. From 2008 through 2017, she was the CIO at AES Corporation, which is a Fortune 200 company that generates and distributes electric power in 17 countries. Prior to that, she was the CIO and Senior Vice President at Alcatel-Lucent, where she was responsible for the company's information and communication systems and its e-business platforms. Before joining Alcatel, she was the CIO and Executive Vice President for MCI. Among her many industry awards, too many to count at this sitting, CIO had the honor of inducting Elizabeth in 2014 into our CIO Hall of Fame. Welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mary Fran. Great to be here. Nice to see you after so many years.
It is. I'm so happy that you are resettled now in Boston.
Yes.
I used to have to be in the D.C. area to see you.
I know, and I'm still acclimating to the weather. So.
I know. We were talking about our puffy coats before we went live on the air today, and they are a godsend.
Yes, they are.
So let's start out at a very high level, at kind of the 30,000-foot view. Let's talk about what digital transformation means for the energy management industry today, because I find that all the CIOs I talk to, it means different things in every different industry.
Well, it means a lot to us. So we're a technology company at heart. We've been in business for 180 years, so a very strong history along the way, and probably in the last number of decades in energy management. So in the past, where we would have devices in buildings, data centers, and homes, those devices have now become connected. Yeah. So we think of that as really the start of the Internet of Things. And so at the heart of our company now is how do we help our customers connect all of these devices that are now at every stage of, let's say, a building or a home, managing energy throughout, whether it's a data center, an industrial, like a food and beverage plant, or a manufacturing plant. And so to us, this is at the heart of our business and our future. And there's a lot of mega trends that are also taking place that are really affecting what we do. So it's digitization, it's industrialization, and it's decarbonization, and also decentralization. So there's a couple there, and so each one of them are affecting how our customers want to do business and the way they want to manage their energy to be more reliable, safe, and efficient.
Well, and will electric vehicles find their way into this mix at some point?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt, yes. I mean, I think we're going to see an uptake in EVs here in the next 5 or so years. I mean, I think we're watching the automotive industry very, very carefully. And,
yes.
We've even seen the news with GM recently. They're planning for the future with EVs as well.
Well, and I was looking, there was a McKinsey report recently about the energy management industry, and it was talking about the digital transformation there and about how digital technologies are helping power companies predict and manage and control these very decentralized and complex networks. But when I talk about networks, I often think that it's like between companies, that it's all B2B. But what you do at Schneider Electric is also B2C. You have direct. Talk a little bit about your customers and who they are.
So our customers range from electricians. So these are independent folks who are possibly working on someone's home, a new home, or maybe making a home smart. Our customers are large data centers. Companies, real estate. So real estate companies that manage big office buildings are also our customers. I mentioned the industrials. So you'll see large manufacturing plants, distribution centers. So we have a wide range of customers.
Yes. Well, and the digitization, the efforts, I often think that digital transformation has to have two halves to it. The part that's external facing and focused on customers, and then the part that's internal and how the company operates. And, we often talk in this industry about people, process, and technology. And I think we both would agree that technology is kind of the easy, no-brainer part. It's the people and the process that actually matters. Now, when you were joining about a year ago, Schneider Digital was being carved out as a new special division and unit in the company. Talk about that and how that operates and fits with your organization, which is Enterprise IT.
So about 18 months ago, the company decided that it needed to carve out part of the company and call it Schneider Digital.
Yeah.
And so just about a year ago, that organization was launched. And so the previous CIO, Hervé Carrel, was elevated to the Chief Digital Officer. And so with that, he partnered with a number of his business partners to create a set of practice areas. So I have a number of peers. One is working on our digital offers. Another one is working on the digital exchange with our customers. Another is working on our digital exchange with sales and service and field services. We have another one working with our R&D community. We hired our first chief digital officer, and then I round out the practices as the CIO and what we call enterprise IT inside the company. And then there's a number of transversals that work with all of these practice areas around cyber digital, quality, architecture. So this team is really tasked with helping the company transform digitally. That's with our customers, what we refer to as digital versus internally, it's digitize. And so the way we differentiate among the two is digitize is continuing to automate all of our processes and to use new technologies like robotic process automation, cloud first, API first, mobility first. And then when we talk about digital, we talk about that more in the context of what it means to engage with our customers.
Yes.
So more on the digital products, the connected products.
That's actually a nice way to divide it up because it kind of keeps everybody clear on what you're talking
Right,
about.
because it can be confusing. People, struggle all the time. What's the, different meaning between the two?
Well, and that's why one of the reasons I often start these interviews asking what is, because digital transformation is one of those industry buzzwords like innovation or even like IT leadership. It can mean so many different things depending on which layers you peel away. You'd mentioned, too, that the company just recently hired its first chief data officer. Talk a little bit about that. What was the reasoning behind that, and where does that executive fit in?
So she came on just after me, so I can only assume that as part of the digital strategy, there was an acknowledgement and an awareness that we really needed to focus on data.
Okay.
There is, if you think about it, any company that's been around for decades, we have so much information and data in our ERPs, in spreadsheets, on people's hard drives. Now we have shared drives. And so, I truly believe that companies will win if they can harness the data, especially for our customers that we've had for many, many years. I mean, this data has such richness to it that we have to figure out how does it make sense, how do we normalize it. And the same is true for our employees. I think about that all the time for employee experience. How do we take it? Just information that's coming in on trouble tickets, right? And say, why does this particular employee, log so many tickets? Is it an issue with, the technology that we've given them? Is it challenges? And so I think we're just at the cusp of really harnessing data,
Yes.
normalizing it, and hopefully even monetizing it, right? I mean,
Well,
that
yeah,
would be the,
yeah.
you know,
Getting
the
gen-
greatest benefit.
That has been the holy grail for CEOs probably for the last 20 years.
Right.
You know, we have this mountain of data. Isn't there gold in there somewhere?
And
You
I
know,
think there is, right?
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah.
think we finally have the technologies. You know, when you think of, you know, just the price of storage has come down dramatically, and what we're now able to do with machine learning and hopefully artificial intelligence, I think it finally becomes, you know, something that we could monetize, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's like a crown jewel for most companies if they can get it right.
Good. Well, and I want to get into more detail about the machine learning and the AI and the RPA and the things you have going on. But first, I want to talk about IT. You have an enormous IT organization. It's 2,200 employees, and this is the piece that is enterprise IT.
Yes.
How does you're in 100 different countries.
Yes.
And you're a truly global company. Tell me about. I'm trying to think where to start with that. Because you said about being a global company that this one feels the most global that you've worked at, and you've been a CIO at 4 different companies now. How do you run an IT organization that big across 100 countries? How do you have it organized?
Well, most recently, what we did was we organized by regional CIOs. So I'm the global CIO reporting to the chief digital officer. But I realized when I looked at the business model of the company, we have 5 major regions or operations or zones. Pick a word. We use all 3. But these are really our P&Ls of the business. And so we had the opportunity in a number of them to sit at the table of the president of that particular P&L or zone. And so I wanted, and I was playing double duty when I first started. I was not only the global CIO, but I also was the CIO of North America, filling in for that position. And so it gave me a firsthand opportunity to sit at the table of Annette Clayton, our president of North America, and see the interaction and hear the challenges of the business.
Yes.
And I felt that I needed to have people at this table because I can't be everywhere. I can't be at all these meetings to make the connection with our business partners and ultimately our customers and ensure that we're delivering not only the IT services that they need, but also helping them lead the digital transformation that they want within their regions, because we're not all the same.
Right. Yeah. Now, is the company's goals in digital transformation, does it go all the way up through the CEO to the board level?
Yes.
I mean, is that
Yes.
all right?
And we now
that makes a
actually
difference.
have a digital committee of the board.
That's
so
extremely rare. Good
it
for
is.
you.
It is,
Yeah.
and that's partly why I joined the company over a year ago, because there's a lot of companies that are talking about digital,
Yeah.
but you see very few who are actually taking the initiative to create a digital organization like Schneider Electric did, and then even taking it to the next level where the board is actively engaged. So
It's a shockingly low percentage. We just had a speaker at our Houston event last week. We have our CIO Perspectives Houston that we always do for some reason close to Christmas time. So we were down in Houston, much nicer weather than here in Boston. And our opening speaker was talked all about digital governance. And one of the facts that he shared about it was that only 1% of the Fortune 500 companies have a technology committee of the board, and an even smaller number have a cybersecurity committee. And so he's on a real campaign for digital governance to be part of the board of directors.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if Schneider's already got a
Yeah.
handle on that,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you're leading the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not just IT. I think that's part of the myth. I think
Oh,
a
I
lot of
know.
people still think, well, let's just add this to the CIO agenda, and it's really more than that. It's what do your products and services look like, digitally,
Yeah.
and then how do you weave digital into almost everything that you do in the company?
Yeah, yeah. Now the establishment of Schneider Digital. Do you think, how long do you think it's likely that that stays a separate unit? Is it likely that it eventually Schneider Digital becomes all of IT and digital? I've seen that happen at other companies.
I don't really know.
Because
I
it's
think,
so new.
I think we're still in the early days.
Yeah. Well, when we think about the future and the future that Schneider is envisioning and going toward, and I asked you this earlier, whether you had other business lines you're looking to expand into, but essentially you've got a lot going on now.
We
You know,
do.
You're not. Yeah.
We do. And a lot's going on with our customers too, right? So I think for them, I'm so grateful to work for a company that has honestly an incredible set of products. We call it the EcoStruxure platform, and it's rich, it's deep. We have great services that go along with it. And what if I think of, customers, so if Schneider Electric was selling to me at my former company, I still think to some degree companies are beginning to understand, how do we now move to connected products? How does that help us run our businesses better? How do we move energy through our buildings better? These advisors or these analytic tools. I mean, a lot of it is new to customers. So I think part of, our mission as a company is to help educate, what our customers can do with these new products in the architecture that we've set up called EcoStruxure.
EcoStruxure, yes. I love it when I hear talk about like the digital business ecosystem, and I like the word ecosystem there because the implication is very strong that it is involving as much of business as it is of technology.
Yes.
And I feel like that struggle might finally be over. You know how long IT has been trying to get across that bridge and do things that are more collaborative with business, and it's hard to avoid it now. And one of the other things that we talked about, you mentioned that if we think back 10 years ago when the world was in a state of economic meltdown in 2008, how much that slowed down a lot of innovation. And I've heard this from other CIOs too, that we seem to be seeing a surge of innovation, of establishing digital units in companies, essentially of CIOs moving into kind of exciting new opportunities around this. And that felt that way to you when you were first interviewing with Schneider a year ago?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that was, with IT, I think we have peaks and valleys, right? You and I have many decades of experience, and
too many to mention.
The good news is I think we're on a high, right? I believe that people are finally getting what digital technologies mean and what it can do for your company.
Yes.
Where I think 10 years ago, again, everyone was kind of looking inward. IT budgets were being reduced. There was just
doing more with less.
Doing more with less, right?
Yeah.
And in the last couple of years, the price points of certain elements of IT commodities have come down in price. So you think of storage, right? You think of computing power, which is to me what's driving machine learning and artificial intelligence and what's happening with connectivity.
Yeah.
You have employees and customers who are saying, I like my Amazon experience. Why can't I order with you that way? I don't have any issues with my mobile device. Why do I have so many issues with my work device? So I think there's just been this swell, right, of pressure coming from customers, from employees that, we as CIOs have to, figure out how do we respond to that.
I've had CIOs tell me that they think some of the most significant developments that are affecting IT today were things like the introduction of the iPhone and the iPad, the supercomputers we hold in our hands now with our
and
latest
multiples. I
smartphones.
mean, I think that's a big challenge for us too as CIOs, right? It's like people are coming into the office with 5 devices, because their watch counts as one. They've got iPads, iPhones, personal.
That's got to be great for you guys because you need power for all of that, right? Everybody's always looking for an outlet. Have you ever noticed in airports when people are walking around and they're scanning and they're looking for outlets so that they can power up? The industry disruption is always something I like to ask about because the emerging competitors, you don't think of like, a global electric company worrying about Uber-like disruptors. But from what you told me, that is something that you talk about.
We do. We have a healthy paranoia. One of the things we think about is we we look at what's happening around us. So, Uber's a great example of just completely displacing taxis and private cars. We've studied what's happened in the music industry with Spotify. It's one of my favorite stories, and you and I were laughing about this. We grew up with
Yes.
albums and
Yep.
CDs, and we had to buy the whole album. And Spotify came along, and it unbundled that, and you could just buy one
Streaming.
song, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of examples. Airbnb is another great one. So we are a company that has a long history. So we're an incumbent, right? And so there are companies that
You're
are
the one to
disruption,
beat.
right?
Yeah.
And so what we try to do though is look at the benefits of being an incumbent, right? So we have a well-established history, we have customers, we have data, we have capital, and so how do we continue to harness that in this digital age versus sitting back and potentially being disrupted by a
Yes.
startup? So it's out in front. We watch it pretty closely. Again, it's that healthy paranoia that we
Yeah.
like to have.
Well, it never did Andy Grove any harm, right? Well, and I think of too a speaker we had at our big innovation conference, our CIO 100 last summer. It was Luke Williams. He's a professor at NYU's Stern School of Business, and he runs their innovation center. And he had a whole concept he talked about around ideas and how you have to think of ideas as they're like the ingredients of a recipe where you can mix and match them together, and that by you sharing your idea with someone else, you're not giving it away. And he used the Airbnb example, and he said that was Airbnb took an existing resource, bedrooms in people's homes that weren't being used, and they turned it into essentially, by connecting people around it, drew it into a business idea. And he was making the whole big point that innovation can and should be everywhere, but that it's more about the ideas and the connection. And that struck me about what you were telling me about Schneider's company culture and how many conversations and like how much sharing there is between people in the country. As someone who's new, who's been there in the first year, how have you haven't visited 100 countries yet, right? So how do you get around among the other executives that you need to see? And talk a little bit about that.
Well, I would say that we really try to make use of our collaboration tools. So,
Okay.
Certainly have traveled to, some of our locations where either I had a large IT mass or, just good places to visit. But we really do leverage collaboration tools. We're big users of Skype, and so that just seems to be a normal, cadence for us. And then everyone seems to always be available. So it hasn't really been difficult getting around.
Good. Tell me how the 2,200 people you have in enterprise IT, how are they organized? How do you have it structured so that you cover the world and handle all the enterprise issues? Because I think you said 2/3 of the digital organization is also part of your organization.
Right.
Okay.
So I have these 4 regional CIOs who are facing off to our business leaders
Yes.
who own the P&Ls.
And this is something you established.
And so, I'm really looking to them to have the heartbeat of what's happening, on the ground with the operations, with salespeople, services people, and of course our customers. And then I have a couple of people that face off to key domains in the company. So that would be finance, our global supply chain, and HR. So they all have direct relationships with those senior leaders. So they're bringing, how do we help finance? What are their digital initiatives? Same thing with HR and global supply chain. And then I have a couple of traditional global teams around cloud, infrastructure, global delivery for ERP, help desk, on-site support. So they round out the mix. And then, of course, I have a cybersecurity person, a quality person, and folks who support me from marketing, HR, and finance. So it's a relatively large team, but it's what I think we need in order to manage the demands that we face, and that we do support 144,000 employees who then support our customers. So we believe it's really important to get them the tools that they need every day in order to help our customers.
Yeah. It sounds so daunting. It's just,
And there are days that it feels that way.
it really does take an IT village, doesn't it?
does.
Yeah. Well, and before we move on to talking a little more about customer demands, I'm always interested in how CIOs coming into a new organization, how you assess the company culture, because the way you're going to do your job, the way you're going to connect with other executives, all matters on how the company works inside.
Yeah.
How did you figure that out as you were coming in?
It was an interview I had with our CEO, and so it was the last interview in the process. And I asked him a question about culture in a roundabout way, and I said, "What do you love about your company?" And he paused for a moment.
Yep.
So I wasn't sure if this was a good question to ask. But
No, that's always a good sign that you've asked a great question.
and
if someone
so-
has to think.
And so he said that it was no matter where he traveled, right, to these 100 countries, no matter what level person he spoke to, there was this genuine desire to help each other.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was looking for. I wanted a people culture. I wanted to go into a company where people did want to give back, because that's where I was in my career. And so I arrive, and he was absolutely right. I mean, it's amazing to me how people will reach out to each other, don't even know where people sit in the hierarchy. It doesn't matter. People are just always able to help or get you the help that you need. So I think that's a big part of the culture that I really enjoy. We absolutely respect different nationalities and cultures. You mentioned it earlier. This was something that I saw, because I've either worked for U.S. companies or French companies, and in both cases, that's the dominant persona or culture. And what I find here is, for example, our executives. I mentioned this to you. Our CEO is not in Paris.
No, he's in Hong Kong.
He's in Hong Kong with a number of other leaders. And so, while we are absolutely a French company, we're on the CAC 40, there's this great respect for cultures around the world. And so what I remember in the past, being part of, U.S. dominant countries, we didn't really care, honestly, about
it was sort of like,
how we came across.
It's our way or the
exactly.
highway.
And what I feel here is like we'll really pay attention to, if we want to implement something, well, what will the local community, like how will they react to this? What needs to be our messaging? What needs to be our style? And I find that really heartwarming, honestly, because at the end of the day, it's about people, right? And so that's another part of the culture. And then lastly, I would say we are incredible when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And again, that's something very near and dear to my heart as well. And, we certainly lead from the top. Our CEO is, someone who wins awards for the for inclusivity, for diversity, even before any of this was talked about in the media. So I think it hit all the things that I was interested in culturally.
And looking at a giant traditional electric company, you wouldn't necessarily think that's why you have to ask questions, right? You have to get in the door and find out what's happening. Let's switch over to talking about the customers a little bit more and kind of their expectations and how those are changing in the way they work with Schneider. If there's anything that they might have noticed different about the company since you arrived a year ago, you, the CIO Hall of Famer, what might that be?
Well, I can't take the credit for what's happened with our customers, but I know one of my peers who leads up the interaction with our customers, they're getting many more capabilities on mobile devices, much more information on our products, how to find out information about our products. Even our supply chain, our customers, once they put orders in, have at least 26 different capabilities in order to find out where their order is, maybe split their order, ship it different ways. So there's been a tremendous amount of work that was already happening before I arrived with a number of my colleagues in supply chain and even with our customers. But we're just going to continue to build on that because we follow our net promoter scores, our net satisfaction scores, especially as it relates to digital. And this morning we just had an update, and we're certainly moving up in the percentages of where we were a year ago. But again, my colleagues get the credit for that.
So you didn't have to get the momentum going; it was going.
Oh yes,
you had to get on. You had to just join the wave, essentially forward. Well, let's talk about the top business and technology, or the top business technology initiatives that are most important to the company right now? I know that you've done a lot in moving to the cloud, that you're relying much more heavily on Internet of Things for things like predictive maintenance and machine optimization. What's the biggest technology project or product for you going forward into the next year?
So I would say there's a couple of things. I mean, we really want to also lead in with API first. I mean, that's something that we've hired a new chief technology officer, and so he's coming in with a wealth of product experience.
You're doing a lot of hiring.
Well,
Yeah.
we have been. I mean,
Yeah.
Some of it is bringing in new talent, and I think we have a question on that later. But I would say it's really driving API. It's continuing. I have a statement right now where I say everything has to be on a mobile device. My goal would be in 5 years where we don't have laptops, that we're doing things with our phones, with our iPads, because it's just easier. To me, every time I pull out my laptop, it just seems everything's harder, right? So how do we be more mobile first? How do we get to the cloud faster, right? Because we are a company that's been around for decades. And so we have the legacy, and we call that technical debt. So how do we move off of that quickly,
You can't lift
get to
and
the
shift
cloud?
it to the cloud.
Right.
Yeah.
How do we use RPA more effectively, right? How do we start to automate more of what humans do, so that we as humans are spending more time maybe analyzing information that's coming our way, being more strategic. So I would say that's a big push. And then, of course, we've got to weave in cybersecurity everywhere, because every one of these technologies that I mentioned do bring an element of risk. And so, it's also design. I say cybersecurity in the design phase. Like, there's certain things we've got to do right up front.
Well, tell me a little bit more about how and where RPA, the robotic process automation, is figuring into what you do. That's not just something you're planning for future rollout. This is already underway. What does it do for you now?
Right. So we're starting in the help desk space. So we're working. We get a lot. We get thousands and thousands of calls and tickets coming in every month to our help desk. So and a lot of this is just basic questions. How do I do X, Y, Z? So what we'd like to do is have more of an interface with our employees where they're actually talking to a bot. Frankly.
Okay.
And there's a lot of companies that we already do that today in your personal life. I remember I needed to get a new American Express card, and I was engaging with a bot, and I had a wonderful experience. And didn't have to call an
I think I
operator,
did
so-
that last night. I was
so-
it was like 4 a.m. I was awake for some reason, and I was exchanging. I was talking with a chat thing, and I
Chat
started
bot,
to
yeah.
wonder at some point
Yeah.
if it was a bot. I mean, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess that's the.
So I think there's
that's the
there's certainly
determiner.
application there. Our finance organization is looking at it as well. So what we'll do is we'll kind of practice on ourselves,
Yeah.
very quickly, and then I think that gives us a better opportunity when we meet with our business peers to show them, well, this was the use case that we had. And here's what we were able to do with our PAs, and here's the benefits.
Okay.
But we certainly have a lot of interest in that.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the big word cybersecurity. What are the challenges that your industry faces right now? Because you're critical infrastructure,
Yes.
so
Yes.
you get into a whole bunch of regulation
Right.
that regular run-of-the-mill like publishing companies don't have to worry about.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that. How is that structured? Is that under you in enterprise IT, or does it have its own separate division?
Well, we do have our Chief Information Security Officer. That's one of my peers reporting to the CDO. However, I do have someone on my team who's a direct report that's focused on cybersecurity for enterprise IT.
Okay.
And then there's a peer role in all the practice areas. Clearly, within our businesses where we are developing product, we have cybersecurity experts there. So cyber is almost like embedded throughout the
Yes.
entire company, because we also offer cyber services to our customers
Oh,
who
okay.
implement Internet of Things. So it really has to be part of the DNA of 144,000 people, and that's the way we're approaching it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
training and certification is happening at that level. And so, again, it's like a village, because I don't honestly believe one person could be responsible given the scope of what we have, not only in the countries we serve, our numbers of employees, our customers. You're right, the products we sell are right in the vortex of cybersecurity.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking too. I mean, you created the regional CIO positions. I'm trying to imagine what a company your size and scope, how you could be one CIO running it. And I'm almost relieved to know that you don't have to. That you get to be part of essentially a team, like an office of the CIO, which seems like a really smart way to do it. And I couldn't help but think when I was thinking about cybersecurity, when you were with AES Corporation a few years ago, you were on one of our panels at a CIO event in the DC area, and we were talking about millennials and bringing them into the workforce and the talent challenges, and you had a wonderful anecdote from one of your South American power plants. Tell me that story
You
again.
have an awesome memory.
I take lots of
I'm glad you
notes.
told me the story before we met because I might not have remembered it in
You've been like,
detail.
"What
but
are you talking
but
about?"
we did. We had the group Anonymous attacking us in some of our Latin American countries because we were doing things that they didn't like, and so instead of protesting physically outside our headquarters down there, they decided to attack our websites. And so we were a little bit frustrated because it happened like 2 weeks prior, and even though we rallied everyone together, it happened again.
Yeah.
And we're having all these issues, and we were frustrated.
Felt like crisis management
Yes,
constantly.
and we had our 22-year-old new hire, and he's sitting there listening to all of us, and he goes, "Well, why don't we just join the Anonymous network?" And we were like, "What?" And and we were like, "Oh my God, that's a great idea!" Because the Anonymous network, they
Who
all
would have thought,
Well, they all
right?
chat about what they're going to do and
Sure.
who they're going to attack next. And
Leaky
so,
as a sieve, right?
Right, and so
Yeah.
we just didn't think of that, right? Because we just didn't grow up thinking that way.
Yeah.
And so I really do believe that, regardless of generation, we all have something to bring, right? There are experiences that we all bring to the table, and I do think I have two millennials myself. They just grew up in a different world than we did, and they think differently, and so they're incredibly valuable, and we have to figure out how to leverage them.
Well, and I just remember that story stuck with me because it just hit on so many great themes, and there was a lot of millennial bashing going on at the
Yes, back
time.
then, that's right.
And
That's
I
right.
always feel a little defensive on their part because I've got two millennial children as well, and I like to remind people in the boomer generation that it's our fault that they're that confident, But
Well, they grew up with technology, right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, so.
and they're very comfortable speaking
Yes,
their minds.
that's right,
And
yeah.
if any of us could remember back to our 20s, we were probably just as mouthy, right? Well, this is a nice segue into talent acquisition and retention. And that is often in the top 3 of what CIOs think about and worry about, and, that the classic what keeps you up at night. But I'm struck as I'm listening to you, the way you talk about the company and the way the company relates to itself internally reminds me of the way big, thriving healthcare organizations do, that there's a sense of mission. And I think that a sense of mission is enormously appealing to the younger generations right now.
Agree.
So what has that whole experience been like for you, cultivating talent? Are there areas that are still almost impossible to hire, or what have you found?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think cyber is still very difficult to hire. I think some of the deep knowledge that you may want in some of the digital technologies like cloud and machine learning and AI,
Cloud architects, right?
are hard to find.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's going to continue. I don't believe that resolves itself.
No, I don't think we're going to
overnight.
have a miracle infusion from another planet of talent.
No.
Yeah.
And, I think the other thing, too, is it's that, there's this giga workforce, too, that's coming at us, right? Where it's amazing. I mean, I'm reading people that want to retire at 40. Or, people that just want to live different lifestyles, right?
Yeah.
And they want to work a little and then take time off. And so I think this whole talent acquisition situation is only going to get worse because we have to think differently how we're going to acquire talent. And people are going to be moving, I think, more rapidly through companies. I mean, we're already seeing that, with millennials. And I don't know that changes. So how do we make the best, right, of people we have when they're with us? How do we attract people? Like and even in the countries that we're in,
how do you
my
get
guess
them
is
to recommend your company to their friends?
Right. I think different countries, people have different motivators, right? So again, I think it's like we can't think of this as a one size fits all. I think we have to be really in tune to the market in which we're looking for talent. And then how do we attract them away? Because that's really what we're doing now. I mean, the job market
each other's talent,
yes, because
right?
it's not that there is a lot of people in the marketplace. So it has to be more than just the culture. People have to see, good opportunity to work on great projects. Especially technologists want to be on the leading edge. And so I just, personally, I think we're a company that offers a lot because even as an IT professional, you're not just stuck in IT. I mean, we have R&D centers. We have businesses that are innovating on product, which a lot of this is it's technology. So I think we're in a lot better shape than probably a lot of other companies, just given what's at the core.
Well, do you think, too, that most, especially bigger corporations, simply have to get into the whole growing their own training on technologies in a much bigger and more organized fashion?
Well, I would say yes. I don't know how organized because I believe that, something that I talk to IT people about every chance I get is that we have to be every day we have to be learning. And you have to have, even if it's 10 minutes, right? Like ask Google a question like, what is a Scrum Master, right?
Yeah.
And in 3 minutes you can learn what that is, right? So I want people to be inquisitive. I want people to learn. I'm even advocating to our folks. We have something called Free Up Energy for our people, so we can interpret that the way we want as leaders. And I've said, okay, let's have meaningless, Fridays. Like no internal meetings on Friday.
Personal energy. This is not energy conservation. Like
it's
turning
personal
off your
energy,
lights.
right? It's I free up my energy, or I free up your energy as someone I work with, and and I've said during that time while we have no meetings on Friday, I don't know, take an hour. It doesn't matter to me. Take time to get on our learning platforms and learn something, right?
Yeah.
Or Google something or read a book. Don't care, but it has to be ingrained in what we do because we are we are technologists in a technology company, and so if we're not, on the bleeding edge of some of this, then I think our value is diminished.
Well, and that actually brings me into one of the stories that you were quoted in recently, and I loved what you were up to with this because you had I think the headline was like how Schneider Electric grooms digital experts to spark transformation. We love the word spark, by the way, as a verb. Anytime we can use that in a tech publication, we love it, and especially with an electric company. The whole pun and everything. With your IT staff at 2,200, you have employees that you consider digital citizens. Then there's digital disruptors, and then there's digital experts. Talk about those. What are the different categories? What do they mean?
Well, so as a citizen, it's just someone who even knows what are we talking about when we say RPA or cloud or mobile?
Oh, okay.
It's pretty basic.
All right.
The disruptor is someone who is, let's say working on a problem at work and comes in with a solution that's leveraging one of the digital technologies that no one else has thought of.
They played with something and they came in and said,
hey, I've been reading about, DevOps. I think this is a perfect opportunity to move away from, waterfall. Let's move to DevOps, right?
Yes.
So that's just one example. And then the experts are, really the people that are all of the above, right? So they've proven that they're digital disruptors within the organization, and now they're at the expert level where they're expert across a number of digital technologies, can speak at somewhat of a deep level.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I want folks to have the ability to actually evangelize. What
Right.
do these digital technologies mean? So I do have a goal for all 2,200 people to be digital experts. I get some people that, kind of sit up in their chair over that. But, most of the people in IT have computer science degrees, they're engineers. And
Yeah.
so, to me, this can all be learned. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just, I feel, and Schneider Electric is great about this, where we have a learning platform for people.
Mm-hmm.
We post content. We encourage people to post content on their own, write blogs, teach each other. So the environment is there. Right.
Okay.
It just takes people spending, some time and getting the opportunity to work on projects
Yeah.
to become experts.
Is there so it's part of their goals as employees, but is there a curriculum? Do they get a certificate? Is there
Well,
is there a clearly defined path?
Yes, so we are developing those curriculums right
okay.
now, and some of them are
cool.
online. And yes, we have to reward people, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's the great motivator. So
Yes.
we'll figure something
You
out.
have to gamify it.
Yes,
too.
and we do
Yeah.
have. That's what's kind of neat on our learning platform. We do have some content that is gaming, and
Yes.
everyone loves that.
There was something I was answering probably some online survey or something, and it was a multiple choice question, and it told you whether you were right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think it had something to do with nutrition, and I was very surprised because I was getting some of them wrong, and I thought I was such an expert. So, but I thought it was just that testing. It was almost like you were interacting with it. So. The IT innovation and how you approach it, how you support it. I'm always interested in that because I find that CIOs kind of fall into two big camps. There are the people that are used to doing much more structured innovation approaches where there are goals set out and there may be metrics that are measured and things that are reported out, and then there's a little more diffuse, a little more unstructured. What is your approach?
I'm more in the diffused.
Are you?
Because
Okay.
we have,
Yep.
we have a lot of structured, programs, and we
You're
have
the one who
very,
came up with
we
the
have
Free
very-
Up My Energy
well,
Fridays.
well,
yeah.
we have a lot of clear deliverables, but I do believe we're at a point right now where we have to do more innovation. We have to give people more sandboxes and opportunities to experiment, fail fast or succeed. And so I would say that's something I'm probably going to focus a little bit more on next year. I just had a few things I needed to do this year, Mary Fran.
I mean, you did have 144,000 employees to meet and, a few things going on there. And there's been so many other CIOs that have joined the company in just the last year. I mean, you created those regional CIO positions.
One we hired in from the outside for North America, and then there was another gentleman who had been with the company a little over a year. Promoted him to cover Europe and France, and then there was another gentleman who joined just before me in China. So
Yep.
he got that title recently, and then I took someone who's been at the company a long time, 20 years, mostly in technology, out of India, and have now given him the regional CIO for our international business. So it's a little bit of a mix from inside and out.
It's such
Yeah.
a different perspective shift to be in those sorts of positions.
Yes,
so
it is.
It's very smart.
It's a different perspective too.
That way.
It's a lot more. Your conversations are much more about the business, not necessarily technology when you're sitting at some of the tables.
Well, and I can't remember now if it was in our interview now or before we got in here, but you were mentioning that the technology is actually pretty easy. It's the people in the process that CIOs spend all their time.
Yeah, I worry more about that because one, if we're leveraging technology that's been proven, odds are someone's done it right. So if you haven't, you can go find who's got it right. But it's the change for people, right? And it's process I think is being disrupted massively now, much more than ever before, right? And then that makes people uncomfortable because if we're automating more of what people do, it's well then what do I do, right? There's always that conundrum, which is what we're going to face with artificial intelligence.
Okay, and that's a great segue into where AI fits into all of this. Is it part of an innovation group working in a little corner of enterprise IT? Is it part of Schneider Digital? Is it everybody's responsibility? Where does AI work into your digitization right now
Yeah,
internally?
I mean, well, I'll look at it two ways. So within enterprise IT, to me, it's a layering. So we first have to have, normalized data. There's this whole data analytics layer. Then I think we can get to machine learning, and then I think you eventually get to artificial intelligence. Okay. So I would say in the realm of what we're doing in IT, we're still in that journey. And then, of course, we have all of the people in our company that are building product that we sell to our customers. And so they are driving that very hard because they're probably more advanced than we are in IT regarding the data, machine learning, and AI. Okay. So we have I personally think we've got a little bit of catch up to do in enterprise IT.
Okay. Well, and I know one of the other things you have going on, and I run into this a lot, where there's either an entire new approach to putting in an ERP system or a huge refresh going on. So when you think about essentially the central nervous system of the company, that's what an ERP system is. So tell me about that. What do you have going on? It's a refresh.
So we have a big one going on here in the United States for order to cash, and we were faced with an interesting dilemma because we're on a release of SAP that's into life in 2025, and so to me that's in my lifetime.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Hopefully in my
you
lifetime
can't
at Schneider
that one.
Electric.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So when Hervé and I, were talking about it, we had a choice. This would be the last of the old release, or we go new.
Yeah.
And I'm always pushing the envelope, as you know, Mary Fran. So, I said, let's go. Let's go with a new one. We talked to Annette Clayton, who's the president of North America, and her team. And it's so critical for us. And we've got to get it right. There's just no question about it. It's it's one of our biggest operations. And so part of what we thought about too was getting the right person in here, because in many cases with an ERP, you go out and you hire an integrator, or you maybe take a director level person and you put them over the project. And so we actually went and we got a 3-time CIOer.
Okay.
So a person who, is at a point in their career where they had done this before. Yep. They were open to the challenge. So this individual, she works for me. She's also working closely with a senior person in North America on Annette's team. So we have them locked in at the hip. Not only are we putting in new software, but we're also going to take the DevOps Agile approach to this. And so we're breaking the glass everywhere. Yeah. But again, I'm not as concerned about the technology, because what we're using with SAP has been proven. Other companies have used it before. I actually implemented it in my last company. Yeah. So it's more about, how do we really think differently? So if we want to transform how we think about order to cash, I think our customers would probably love virtual assistants to say, where is my order? Or I want to order X number of circuit breakers. So we want to bring all that thinking in. And we also, you and I talked about this earlier, we don't want requirements being thrown over the fence. Right. And a year from now we come back and say, oh, here's what we think you wanted. Yeah. We really want this approach where we're inviting in our business partners, our customers, our distributors, so that we've got these incremental deliverables. So every month we've got something. Yeah, and thinking more like a product versus, a project. And you and I talked about that too.
Yes, and I love that. I've been asking a lot of CIOs about it because, again, it gets to that mindset change. The way you think about a product life cycle is entirely different from the in and out that you have with managing a project. Because you can get it all done and wipe your hands of it and onward to the next project, and it can be a huge implementation failure, but that's not your fault. The project came in on time and on budget. I mean, it's just a different mindset. Yeah. Do you find that the shock waves of what's going to be involved in terms of the time and the commitment from the business side, has that hit yet?
No.
Okay.
Well,
Because
I
you
think,
know that's gonna.
I mean, I think even
Yeah.
in IT, right? We're going through. At least the classes have started here in North America. I mean,
Yeah.
we're offering 2-day classes on Agile and DevOps, and I mean, there's a lot of excitement, which is great.
Yeah.
So
'Cause it's the honeymoon
Yeah, because we
phase.
have a Yammer
Yeah.
channel, and I'm
Yep.
watching the comments. But it will like anything else, it will take a learning curve to some degree. But
Yep. Yep.
we've got to make it successful. I mean, it just isn't
Right. right.
a long-term
Yes.
choice here.
Well, and the platform you're moving to, will it be all cloud based? Is that what HANA is essentially? Okay. I know the names of the products, but I don't know much else about them.
Well, it's their new release.
Yeah.
It's like database, in memory, and there's
Right.
quite a bit involved. But yes, we want to move everything.
Oh, wow.
To the cloud.
Wow.
And, yeah.
What percentage of your IT is in the cloud now?
I don't know exactly, but it's relatively low.
Okay. I would guess it
because
would
we
be
have
low.
there's an interesting. This is what we call tech debt. So we have a lot of legacy. So there's some apps that we can't even move to the cloud.
No, they're probably still running on AS400
or
somewhere.
even something else. So,
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
S34s.
But the point is everything that can move to the cloud, we want to, and then anything we do new, has to be a cloud technology.
Okay. Emerging tech trends and the way they impact your business and the competitive environment. We've mentioned AI. We've talked a little bit about robotics, machine learning. How do you keep on top of this, or how do you assign that out to keep on top of it? And how do you govern it? Where does it fit in with your CIO governance strategies with emerging technologies?
Well, I would say right now it's somewhat dispersed.
Okay.
And so what we'll look to do next year is probably bring that a little bit more closer to my table in discussions that we've had, because a lot of it has been taking place in pockets around the world.
Okay.
So there's been some innovation within IT. So there's, for example, there's a group in India, in Bangalore, who's been working on a virtual assistant called Rudy for us. There's also a group there who's been working on RPA. We've got another group that's more advanced in cloud. So we're kind of I would say the last year or two has been a lot of these local experiments, and next year's probably the year to start to formalize. But I also don't want to be too formal, because I want to make sure that people can be agile.
Yes.
Right? Because too much oversight, too much
structure.
I've which gets away from free up
Yeah.
energy.
Well, yes, exactly. And I've had CIOs tell me that they've done, the innovative emerging technology, they've done structure around it, and then watched the weight of the structure kill the efforts. And so usually when they've tried a much more structured approach, they end up being real fans of the dabbling, dabbling with a purpose, that sort of thing. I love that idea of free up energy.
Yeah.
Just,
and then I try to encourage, we're big users of Yammer, and so I have one channel that has 2,200 people. And so
Wow.
I constantly,
how do you get any work
share-
done if
well-
you got to watch that all day?
I don't watch it all day.
Oh,
I mean,
all
I
right.
have to actually put it in my calendar to try to go and look at it. But, that's been really terrific too, just encouraging people, share what you're doing.
Yeah.
What's the outcome from maybe some experiment that you had, and just me being able to like it, or for other people to comment or even add to it, has been great. And I think that's more the collaboration that I'd really
Yes.
like to see.
Well, and that's people that are self-motivated, and they're going to be impassioned about something, and that's not something you can assign. As soon as I always, my joke is that the minute, especially in a publishing company, the minute there's a task force, that it's a death knell. We're like, oh, we're not going to solve this problem. We're going to have a task force. So, last question. I told you our hour would go by very quickly, and it really has. I always like to ask about the leadership question about balancing all the competing demands on the CIO, because you've done a lot of roles that are CIO plus and plus. You've managed other parts of the business. You're kind of relishing being back at the helm in enterprise IT right now, whereas a lot of CIOs are adding chief digital officer to their title these days. And I always wonder about just the ability to bear all of those competing demands without having a nervous breakdown. So, and there was a quote that I pulled that you'd said where you were talking about how you thought that CIOs are really great business people and that management and boards are recognizing that they can do more. So talk just a little bit as we wrap up about the CIO role and how it's evolved for you personally and also what you see from your peers.
I think it depends upon the company that you work for. So, as you know, in my last company, the IT organization wasn't as large. We were producing power for the most part. We had
only 17 countries you were in instead of 100.
And we also had, our customer base was a lot smaller because we were selling to an off-taker, so to say.
Yeah.
And even our utilities, we had maybe 1 million or so customers. So I had the capacity, honestly, to do more than just be CIO. I come to Schneider Electric and, the heart of our company is technology. The heart of our company is digital products, connected products, services, 144,000, people. We're going through our own internal digital transformation as well as offering digital products to our customers. So, I think it would be really hard to have more than just what I have with enterprise IT, just given the mandate and what we need to do, and we have to move really fast. So it's not that I could say, oh, I'll create this 5-year plan, because I've got all these other things that I need to do. So again, I think it just depends upon the company itself, the maturity of the organization, where are they maybe in their digital transformation journey? Do you have the talent? Are you trying to grow the talent? Are you trying to upskill the talent? I mean, I think there's just so many, factors that go into, how much can a CIO, really do and be impactful. Right.
Well, and I think that's something that you have something of a history of having a big impact at places where you're at.
Thank you.
So but I love that idea that you essentially design the CIO role around what the company needs to move forward. And I think that's that's what I think is so fascinating about the CIO role is that it is always changing and morphing. It's a shapeshifter. The CFO role is pretty predictable, company to company. The same even for chief marketing, for chief operating, but the CIO role, it's really hard to put a pin in it and say, oh, this is exactly what it is and what it will be.
Yeah, especially now, just given the technology shifts, right? I mean, I think they're unprecedented what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mary Fran.
It's been a great conversation, as I knew it would be. It was so nice of you to come in and join us in the studio here. And if you joined us late for this episode, you'll be able to watch the entire thing, or you and I can just watch it again and enjoy it all over again at CIO.com. We'll have it posted tomorrow. And you can also listen to the audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love to have you join us for our next episode, which will be Wednesday, January 9th. We'll get ourselves through the holidays. I'll be back at 2 p.m. Eastern on January 9th with Joe Spagnoletti. He's the former CIO of Campbell's and now today the CIO of US LBM Holdings. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you'll join us again next time. And thank you again, Elizabeth.
Thank
Delightful having you. We'll see you next time. Thanks.